session, so I'll hand over again to Chris String. Over to Chris.
Dropping a pen.
Yeah.
Well, it's me again. Hello. One of my very favourite game developers is stealing a drink of water. Is the UK studio Rare. The 37 years old, Rare is, I think, and that's exactly my age. And for someone my age, Rare all about Banjo-Kazooie, GoldenEye, Donkey Kong Country, all those sort of things. But actually, for most people, a little bit younger than me, they're best known for the smash hit Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is Rare's first, is brand new, very different, unique IP. It's Rare's first live service game. It was the first Xbox game to launch day and date in Game Pass. It's Rare's first internally developed PC game. It's actually quite a lot of firsts. It's been a voyage to get to this far, and to share with us about what they've learnt along the way, please welcome studio head Craig Duncan.
I'll just sit and listen to Shu talk for another 30 minutes, actually.
Yeah. I thought we could extend it. That was the got the streams. We're here to talk about modern Rare, obviously,
yes.
and Sea of Thieves. But I'd be letting myself down if I didn't mention the return of GoldenEye.
It's an ambush. You said we were talking about Sea of Thieves.
I know, this is it. The game has been stuck on the N64 for 25 years. Yeah. You've tried bringing it back before to no success, but now it's coming back. It's coming to Switch and Xbox.
Yeah.
How did you pull that off?
To be honest, it took us longer than I wanted it to. I think we tried to get it lined up for when we did Rare Replay back in 2015, which I guess was Rare's 30th anniversary. Yeah. And we, as you imagine, things involving licenses and published games just have complexity in that. So my answer to your question is lots of conversations. Lots of conversations with our friends at Nintendo, the folks at MGM, folks at Xbox, and we just kept talking till we made it happen. And we made it happen. So I'm proud of that.
Yeah, I'll get some more out of you after it. Well, that game obviously marked a golden era for Rare, but actually you're going through another one right now. You've gone through quite a few since then with Sea of Thieves. I don't think a lot of people realise how successful that's been. How successful has it been?
So I think 3 people today on my trip between Kettering, where's the train I got on, and London have said, oh, that's Sea of Thieves. So at least 3 people have played it because they recognise the T-shirt and called out the game. But no, we're really proud of the journey, and actually, we don't actually spend a bunch of time looking back. And Sea of Thieves, by any measure, is huge. Like, we're over 30 million players. We have more people working on Sea of Thieves now than when we launched. You know, we've done over 100 updates. The game continues to evolve. So it's almost this weird kind of, we don't spend a lot of time reflecting on where we've come and how far we've come in that success, because we're always looking at the opportunities ahead of us. Mm-hmm. So Sea of Thieves, we launched in 2018. We were obviously in our insider program and alphas and betas before that through late 2016, 2017. And now we're in 2022, and we still see loads of opportunity ahead for Sea of Thieves. Like, we had more players in this last year than we did pretty much year on year. We've grown the game. Like, we've had more players year on year since launch. So it's huge, and it's an at-scale recognised franchise with well over 30 million players. Like, it's amazing, and just credit to the team for the great job they've done.
That's 3 times more players than GoldenEye got. Let's go
Probably
back
6 times. But
yeah. Let's go back to the beginning of Sea of Thieves. What was going on at Rare at that time, and what made you go, right, we're going to do something, we're going to do this very brave thing?
Yeah, I mean, so just 2014 was definitely a pivot point for the studio. So, we did a lot of real soul searching about what did we want Rare to be, and what was the, as you mentioned, Rare had been around a couple of decades at that point. What was going to be the things and the values that defined Rare for the next multiple decades? And we decided, we wanted to go do ambitious things and go on adventures together. We wanted to go make games the world doesn't have, and that really put us very much into, let's make sure we create new IP. And then really it comes down to, looking at what we had in the studio. We sent a bunch of people out thinking about things, and I think we've told this story before. We had this very designery sort of phrase kicking around called group-shaped narratives, and what if we could make a game about how soft skills and working together and going on an adventure with your friends could translate into the game, and that turned into a sort of evolved version of that pitch called players creating stories together. And it wasn't even pirates at this point. It was just hey, we actually think there's a real opportunity in if you can create a game where you can go on adventures with your friends and different things happen during those adventures. And that was the bit we got really passionate about. And then it was really what's the right theme and wrapper to go set that vision.
And Greg was always going to do pirates.
Well, and there's definitely a line going through Rare's history of pirates showing up in games. And then it does really come down to, you have a set of people you trust, you give them the space and the creative freedom to go and explore an area, and then it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy about how that game comes to life and how we share it, and just the more and more we went down that sort of adventurous path, the voyage into the unknown, the more excited we felt about it, and then lo and behold, we had a pirate game at the end of it.
I remember seeing it at E3, and I thought it was such a super ambitious, very, very AAA, very exciting game, but I was worried about it. I think I even said to you, I don't even know what kind of game this is, and you went, it's a pirate game, which is true. But there wasn't exactly a huge number of sort of shared world pirate experiences. Yeah. So first, how did you convince Xbox this was a good idea? Because clearly it was, but I was a bit worried about it at the start. And second, how did you find an audience? How did you connect something so different with an audience you perhaps don't even know existed?
Yeah, they're great questions, and I think it's so easy to look back in hindsight and say we had a great strategy, we had a great team, great culture. Of course, we were always convinced it was always going to be a success, and that's easy, and probably a bit of revisionist history. Yes, we had we had a lot of passion for the idea that we were creating. We believed in it, and I think fundamentally you've got to start there. We believed we were building something very unique and very special that was like no other game. I do think being distinctive when you build new IP is really important. You've got to be able to talk about what's special about your game relative to other games. I think she mentioned it earlier, there's hundreds and hundreds of games out there. And even in those early days, I don't think we were particularly good at telling our story. I think we knew we had something special. We hadn't really figured out how to talk about it in that way, hence my answer, it's a pirate game.
Yeah.
But, we had some pretty strong principles about what the game was. And, I can remember it now, I probably haven't thought about this for 5 years, but it was be the pirate you want to be in a fantastical world, go on adventures together. They were the pillars of the game. And if you go play Sea of Thieves now, anyone that's played Sea of Thieves, it's kind of what it is. You go on adventures together in a fantastical world and be the pirate you want. Again, a lot of the values in the team about self-expression and who you are and was really important. And then to your question about the organization, it's our job and it's part of my job to help build that belief that what we're making is magic and what we're making is genuinely something special. And we obviously pulled loads of tricks in terms of just getting people to come and play. We had the team dressed up as pirates in videos that we sent round to the org. I think at one point we actually sent someone a treasure chest with a riddle in it to go find some clues to show them some bits of the game. So we actually, if you think about that creativity, it's really important to do that internally and make it not dry business pitches whenever you engage with people, because the rest of the wider org want to be excited about the thing you're doing as well. And then take that into the audience. Again, I think from the very first reveal, there was a bunch of people that fell in love with what Sea of Thieves was, fell in love with the promise of Sea of Thieves. So that's your start point, and you start there. And then as we started building out our community team, it was It was really, people that were maybe interested in games that they could go and venture in with their friends, or maybe they loved pirates, or maybe they just wanted to play something different, or they wanted a way to connect with their friends. So different parts of what we made appeal to different. Some people loved the storytelling. A bunch of people loved when we brought Pirates of the Caribbean into our world, and so all these different things connect to different audiences. But I think what we got better at doing was how we storytell and how we kind of really show people the really amazing things we've made as a studio.
Well, so let's go back a little bit. It was because it's your first live. I mean, Rare's made tons of great multiplayer games before, and online multiplayer games. It's your first live service game.
Yeah.
So what did you identify as things or people that you needed to bring into?
Yeah, so we loved the idea of making an evolving game, and I think back probably when we were in early 2018, I think we referred to it as a live service game or games as a service. I think was just the industry moniker now. But I think as we've matured, our thinking on that, this sense of what is an evolving game, what does it mean to make a game that continues to evolve and evolve for your players that are playing, but also bring new things and do new things into that. So that's been a real journey for us. Back in, I guess, 2014, so we had a bunch of people off building prototypes and playing around with group-shaped narratives and soft skills and just a bunch of fun just exploring that area. And then there was some real realities to what would Rare need to look like if we're genuinely going to be always on with our community, and we're going to communicate with a scale audience as we grow, and we're going to run technical alphas, going into betas, going into run a live game at scale. So we actually, a couple of leaders in our business, a chap called Jim Horth, literally he and I sat in front of a whiteboard one day and we said, what would it mean for Rare to go be a company that operates an at-scale service? And we literally wrote on a board, well, we probably need some people that know about live ops because we'll be running servers, and we probably need some people that will think about our analytics and just monitoring all that data, and then we'll probably need to think about audience. Okay, how we're going to communicate with that? Because Rare was probably as traditional a developer as a developer. We have great engineers, great designers, great artists, great audio people, great musicians. We were a really amazing game creation company, but that's very different to being a company that can strategically run an evolving game. And we also learned a bunch as we went. So we kind of went into that really getting us set up to the next stage. Let's run the game, let's ship, let's run a test, let's grow the audience, let's learn a bunch, and then let's do the same. And we brought in some expertise. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. Our whole side of the business is run by Simon Prodger that thinks about our audience and brand. And if you get an email from Sea of Thieves talking about the cool things that's coming up in Sea of Thieves, someone in the studios put that together, and that program and our community days and all those things all have to complement each other.
I actually did I had a conversation. I'm not sure, he won't be happy I mentioned this. An Xbox PR person said that working with Rare is a bit of a dream. They're sort of self-running in that, when it comes to what you put out, what you talk about, how you engage with, you sort of do it yourself. I don't want to use the word that you're like a publisher, but in a way you sort of have a lot of those functions in sort of, and then you've got the wider Microsoft business around you to sort of.
No, and I think that's true, but when we think about, and I'll just localize it to Sea of Thieves, Sea of Thieves players are our players. So we very much think about how we communicate with our Sea of Thieves players, and that is multi-layered. That's, some of that is future things, and that can be Joe and Mike doing a podcast about some of the things they want to do in the future, right down to Christina running our community team and setting up a community day. And I think there's a thing we're doing at the moment, which is show us your pirate dress up and talk about the stories you had in Sea of Thieves, and all of those things are really about the studio caring about its community and players and just having that always on dialogue.
Well, you've consistently, as someone who plays the game quite a lot, you've consistently and repeatedly changed Sea of Thieves as the game has gone along since it launched, not just before it launched. I actually quite enjoy it, but I imagine it can be quite unsettling for players, but also for the team. How do you sort of mitigate that?
Yeah, it's a couple of things. I unpick that question. I think there's always unknowns, and whenever you do anything, whether you're building a game for the first time or whether you're operating a game at scale, there's always unknowns. You know everything up to what you've done, and then everything beyond that point is unknown. I think as Rare, we've been very intentional with how we've evolved things. So I think evolving is part of Rare's culture. I think it's definitely part of our studio culture and part of our studio journey. Rare's always evolved and changed and continues to. I've only been privileged to run the studio for 11 years. We've changed a lot in that time. But I'm excited about the changes we've got to come. Our games evolve with our players, and you've said that with Sea of Thieves. And I think as individuals in our team, it's our job to constantly evolve and rethink what we do, how we do things, how we learn. I think I've learned more about doing what I do in the last year than I did in the 10 before that, and hopefully next year's the same and beyond. So I think that's being willing to evolve, being willing to change, adapt, is part of, I think, it's in who Rare is. And then also, having a strong culture is really important to that, because when you've got unknowns, when you've got uncertainty, actually being able to trust the people you work with, because you are going on that adventure together, you will have, it can feel a bit like a roller coaster, and it's those times where you've got to actually work together and trust the people beside you, and don't be afraid to make decisions. Part of the reason we've reinvented the Sea of Thieves service, we went from large updates to monthly updates to small stories to seasons to, I think now we're running a version of seasons plus adventures plus mysteries, and we just continue to adapt what we think works, and it's really about hey, what would be the delightful experience for the players, and then we'll figure out the engagement and business beyond that. So if we want to change and make something better, we'll change and make it better, and then we'll figure out how to do it.
Okay. Well, going back to firsts, Sea of Thieves was the first Xbox game to launch, first-party Xbox game to launch day and date in Game Pass. Did you have any concerns about that at the beginning, and how's it been for you since then?
I mean, anything. I think just echoing what I said earlier, anything that's unknown, you can either look at as a concern or an opportunity. I tend to be a bit more on the opportunity side. It's hey, if it's something unknown, how can I shape that unknown into an opportunity that we can go take advantage of? So for us, and it's funny now to look back at Game Pass 5 years on, because now I go log into Game Pass and Sea of Thieves is still up there as one of the top 10 games, and people play it, and we see a lot of players come into Sea of Thieves from Game Pass. Obviously, in that early day, it was an idea. It was a vision as much as anything else. So for us, it was, I think part of Rare's job is to go do new things, go pioneer. So if someone says, hey, we've got this really new idea and you can be first and you can be a pioneer in that, you're definitely appealing to my sense of, what we get out of bed for, what we do, and the privilege we get to be in this industry to go do new things. So it wasn't that hard a sell. Hey, do you want to go be first and do something pioneering that might, genuinely be better for players? If it's good for players, if we think it's good for the game, it's a good reason to go do it. So that all checked out. And then as an early service-based game, obviously, as I mentioned, from that first trailer, a bunch of people fell in love with Sea of Thieves. As we ran our technical alphas, a few more people came in love with Sea of Thieves. We then went and did our beta. We were the number one most watched game in the world on Twitch, running up to launch. So again, you're capturing kind of hearts and minds as you crescendo to a launch. And then you hit a real peak, because that's the kind of peak excitement, and everyone that was sort of interested in Sea of Thieves jumps on board then. But then there's other games that come out and people have other times and pressures, and you see, and anyone that runs any game, as any service-based game or any service will know this, you will see peaks and troughs, and depending on the game and the play frequency, different things will happen. And actually at that point, Game Pass was super valuable for us, because whereas I think in a world where we attracted all the people that were really into Sea of Thieves, we'd kind of got them already, and they were interested in us before launch, and they were going to jump in anyway. I think what Game Pass gave us, particularly in that first year, was almost a constant flow of people willing to go try Sea of Thieves. So they weren't people that fell in love with the trailer the first time we announced it. They were people that seen the iconic skull on the Game Pass dash and thought, oh, it's a game about pirates. We've just finished playing this multiplayer game. Let's go try that. And that, I think, really helped us, almost in a lifeblood kind of way, that until we really found our rhythm for evolving the game, like it actually helped us, make sure that we had a constant population of players, that people were continued to be engaged in Sea of Thieves. But also, I think it was mutual. Like, I think also, Sea of Thieves and Game Pass, like Game Pass was sort of growing in its prominence as Sea of Thieves came out as a new IP. So I think it was like a mutually almost joined relationship that actually benefited both of us, and we learned a bunch of things together.
I guess that's quite a challenge, though. If you've gone through all the alphas and the betas, right, this is what the players like, this is what they want, this is what we're going to make, and then suddenly you get a load of different players who hadn't engaged in you at all, who want different things and stuff. That must explains why you might have to pivot and change them.
Yeah, and we did a lot of stuff, and you've seen the game evolve over time. Things like the maiden voyage and some of the things around. We like almost the purity of our vision in Sea of Thieves to start with was, hey, we're going to drop you on this outpost and like go figure it out, go find the crew, go figure it out. And actually, that works when people know the design pillars and have seen the dev diaries and they know the kind of origin of the game. If you've just come into a game fresh and you're stuck in the middle of an outpost and you're just looking around, you're like, what's this game about? Who are these people? What's that big ship of a crew that's just coming in that's like, who are they? Whereas actually, so things like the maiden voyage, where it's like, no, you can go play in this safe island and learn the game and learn the mechanics, like came about through some of that broadening that you talk about.
So I'll ask one final question for me. I don't know if there might be some time for questions in the audience, but we'll see. What lessons have you learned that perhaps other studios here could benefit from when it comes to what you've experienced in the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years, I guess?
Yeah, I guess eight years now,
yeah,
I know, which is crazy. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. I think, obviously, making an amazing game that you believe in as a team is always going to be the thing that's the most important. Like, we get to make games, we get to throw our hearts and souls into the things we make. So making an amazing game is part one. I think you have to have a strategy for how you think about that game, how you connect it with players, how you build community, how you go to market. You can't do one without the other. You need both of those things. And then the third bit is I think it is that culture point, which is, your culture really does underpin everything you do. And, making games isn't easy. Building new businesses isn't easy. Doing new IP isn't easy. Like, there's a bunch of challenges to all those things. So actually having strong culture and people that support each other, back each other, help each other grow, lift each other, like, that's the stuff that's really important, because that will help you push each other to go chase that idea. And people will see this. Like, it's easy to think an idea is not going to work. If I had... I don't know what the analogy is, but there were many people that didn't think Sea of Thieves was going to work. And there were people I spoke to in the industry that didn't think Sea of Thieves was going to work. There were people we hired that ultimately didn't think Sea of Thieves was going to work and left the business. And that's okay, because people can have their views, but I think as a core team, you've got to stay convicted because you believe in that. And people will opt out, and people will opt in, and players and community will opt out and opt in. But what we have is something that's really special, and it's really special because we have and cultivated a great culture to go build that thing that was really special and give them space to go do it. And then part of my job as a studio leader is to build the strategy around that to make sure that becomes successful.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Craig. Does anyone have, we've got a couple of minutes, does anyone have a question they might want to ask?
Not about GoldenEye.
Oh. No questions. Oh, we do have one.
You have some of the most amazing women in the industry who work at Rare, women that I massively look up to in the dev space. But I do a lot of stuff around skills and around job descriptions, and I noticed that to get a job at Rare, you really need to have AAA experience. Is there a reason for that? And do you think there's a big gulf between indie and AAA skills? And is that part of feeding into the culture that you have?
So if that's listed in our job specs, I should go fix that because it shouldn't be listed that explicitly. It's a great question. It's something we've actually talked about a lot because I think as a team, or I know as a team, we value different perspectives and different experience. I think the lines are really blurry now, and I actually don't. I think even the term AAA is somewhat outdated. Like I think it was a term that I came into the industry in the early 2000s, but I'm not sure what that means anymore. I think games are creative bundles of wonderful, wonderful mix of art, technology, design, fun, and that has to reflect the people that make them. So, like we've recently done an apprenticeship program where we've brought some different people into Rare across different groups. We've had a really successful intern program that we've ran for the last 10 years that genuinely, I think probably with a couple of exceptions, 95% of interns that join our business end up staying at Rare. I was chatting to someone yesterday that's 18 years in the business at Rare that started as an intern. So I think for us, it's the creativity, it's bringing their unique value and personality into it, and less. I mean, experience is important, but experience is different for everyone.
Any more questions? All right. We're actually we're at time. Oh, we do have one.
I should change that job spec if it says you need AAA experience.
Hello. On launch, you did a Golden Bananas contest and quiz puzzles. I was wondering if there's any more of that in the future for Rare or different titles, and how that went.
So Golden Banana, and this is the thing, is just you mentioned that, I'm like, oh yeah, we did do the Golden Bananas in the quest. We've done so many crazy things with Sea of Thieves, and that again is just the, hey, we've got an idea, let's go run with it, let's see what happens. I think we do love the idea of things crossing from within the game to outside the game, and we've got some ideas and plans on that, but it's just really about how do you. What was fun about the Golden Bananas is the community talked about it. So it was almost like, hey, who's going to win the Golden Bananas, if I can remember it right? And we did some stuff in game, we did some videos, we did some live action. So we love that idea of just doing things that are a little bit kind of quirky that people can talk about and cross the boundaries between the community that love the game and the game. So yes, probably, maybe not as Golden Bananas, but something.
The Sea of Thieves team is actually here on Saturday, so if you're around there, come and join us on EGX on the show floor, EGX Theatre at 1 o'clock, I think, and you can ask them the same question. They'll give you a different answer. That's all we have time for. Thank you, Craig, for that insightful chat. We will be back in 10 minutes for our GI Investment and Publishing panel, so I'll see you in a moment, but thank you to Craig.